My name is Addison Baker. I'm 33 years old, and until recently, I was nothing more than a marketing manager living in Denver, Colorado. At least, that's what everyone thought. Growing up middle class taught me two things: the value of hard work and the importance of family. I took both lessons to heart, perhaps too seriously. Rain pelted my face as I stood outside the Grandview Hotel, watching the shock register on my family's faces. For years, I'd been the reliable one, the responsible older sister who'd funded Ashley's law school dreams, the doormat who endured every cutting remark with a smile, the fool who believed family meant something. They never saw me coming. None of them knew about the six-figure clause I'd quietly inserted years ago, a safety net that would now become their undoing. What I did next made them regret every single insult, every dismissal, every dollar they'd taken from me. This is my story. Growing up as the eldest Baker daughter meant shouldering responsibility from an early age. My sister Ashley, 4 years younger and infinitely more favored, had a way of commanding attention that I never mastered. While I excelled academically and professionally, Ashley dazzled socially. She was charismatic, beautiful, and knew exactly how to manipulate our parents. "Addison," my mother would say with that disappointed sigh I'd grown to expect, "why can't you be more like your sister? Look how well she connects with people." Those comparisons followed me through childhood, adolescence, and well into adulthood. Ashley was the golden child destined for greatness, while I was the reliable, boring daughter who would always be there to help when needed, and then fade conveniently into the background. When Ashley announced she wanted to attend law school in 2015, my parents beamed with pride. They spoke endlessly about having a lawyer in the family, how prestigious it would be, how successful she would become. There was just one problem. They couldn't afford the tuition. "It's such a shame," my mother lamented over Sunday dinner. "Ashley has so much potential. If only there was a way." The expectant silence that followed was deafening. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me, the only one with savings, the only one with a stable career. "I can help," I heard myself say, a decision that would cost me $120,000 over the next 4 years. The gratitude lasted approximately 2 weeks before it was replaced with expectation. Of course I would pay. I was the older sister. Of course I would sacrifice. I had nothing better to do with my money. Of course I would put my own dreams on hold. Ashley's future was the priority. In June 2018, while still funding her education, Ashley called me in tears. "Addie, I need your help," she sobbed, using the childhood nickname she only deployed when wanting something. "My car broke down, and I can't get to my summer internship. It's at Bradshaw and Moore. This could be my future firm." I agreed to loan her $15,000 for a new car. She promised to repay me once she was earning big lawyer money. I never saw a dollar. 6 months later, Ashley's apartment lease fell through, and she needed a place to stay during her final semester. My parents' house was being renovated, so they insisted, that I cover her rent for just a few months. $9,000, and half a year later, she moved out without so much as a thank you note. "You should feel proud," my father said when I mentioned the mounting debt. "You're investing in Ashley's future. That's what family does." Family. That word had become a weapon they wielded whenever I hesitated to give more. Thanksgiving 2022 marked the first holiday after Ashley passed the bar exam. She arrived at our parents' house in a brand new Audi, wearing designer clothes and flashing an expensive watch, all while I was still waiting for repayment of over $150,000 in loans. During dinner, I gently broached the subject. "Now that you're working at Harrington and Associates, maybe we could set up a repayment plan for—" "Oh my God! Are you seriously bringing this up now?" Ashley interrupted, rolling her eyes dramatically. "It's Thanksgiving. Addison, can you stop being so desperate for once?" My mother tutted disapprovingly. "Addison, please, this isn't appropriate dinner conversation." "Your sister just started her career," my father added. "Give her time to settle in before you start hounding her about money." Ashley smirked, swirling her wine. "You'll never be successful enough to matter. Addie, that's why you're so obsessed with the money I owe you. It's all you have." The table fell silent. Even my parents seemed momentarily taken aback by her cruelty, but they quickly recovered, changing the subject to Ashley's recent court victory. I sat there, food turning cold on my plate, wondering when I had become such a stranger in my own family. But nothing compared to what happened on December 10th, 2023. My grandfather, my father's father, had passed away earlier that year. He and I had always been close. He appreciated my practical nature and work ethic in a way my parents never did. During our last conversation before his health declined, he mentioned leaving me something in his will. "You've always been sensible with money, Addison," he'd said. "I want to help you build something of your own." The family gathered at the Willowbrook estate in Denver for the reading of the will and a memorial dinner. I hadn't expected much, perhaps a keepsake or small sum, but when my name wasn't mentioned at all, I felt a pang of confusion and hurt. During dinner, I quietly asked my father about it. "Dad, did Grandpa change his will? He mentioned leaving me something, but—" Ashley's laugh cut through the conversation. "Oh, Addie, always chasing handouts," she announced loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "Should I tell her, Dad, or will you?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Ashley, this isn't the time." "Grandpa did leave you $75,000, Ashley continued, ignoring him. "But Dad and Mom convinced him to redirect it to my student loans instead. They showed him my law school acceptance letter and told him how I was the family's best chance at success." She raised her glass in a mock toast. "So technically, you did get the money. It just went through me first." I felt the blood drain from my face. What?" I turned to my parents. "You convinced Grandpa to change his will?" My mother sighed dramatically. "Addison, you're making a scene. We simply helped your grandfather make a more practical decision. Ashley needed the money for her education." "But I paid for her education," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Over $100,000, money that was supposed to be for my own future." "And we're very grateful," my father said dismissively. "But this is hardly the place to discuss financial matters." From across the table, my cousin Emma, a family attorney who had always been kind to me, caught my eye. The discomfort on her face confirmed everything. They had manipulated my grandfather, stolen my inheritance, and were now gaslighting me about it in front of the entire family. Ashley wasn't finished. "Maybe if you weren't stuck in a dead-end marketing job, you wouldn't be so jealous and broke," she said loudly. "Some of us actually made something of ourselves." The table erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Some relatives looked away in embarrassment, while others poorly concealed their amusement. My aunt tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. I had been humiliated, betrayed, and robbed, all in one devastating blow. I excused myself from the table and fled to my car. Rain had started to fall, matching my mood as I sat alone in my 2015 Honda Civic, watching droplets race down the windshield. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Stop overreacting and come back inside. You're embarrassing us." That was the moment something broke inside me, or perhaps something finally clicked into place. I started my car and drove home in a daze, my mind racing. By the time I reached my apartment, I had made a decision. I was done being the family doormat, done sacrificing for people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient resource, done pretending to be less than I was. Because there was something my family didn't know about me, something I had carefully kept hidden for years. I wasn't just Addison Baker, marketing manager. I was Addison Baker, founder and CEO of Cozy Crafts LLC, an online handmade goods marketplace I had built from nothing in 2018. What had started as a side hustle selling my own handcrafted items had grown into a platform connecting artisans with buyers nationwide. Last year's revenue had topped $4.2 million. I had investments worth $2.3 million spread across technology startups, real estate, and index funds. I was a silent partner in 3 successful Denver restaurants. Most lucratively, I held a patent for eco-friendly packaging technology that generated around $12,000 in monthly royalties. I lived modestly not out of necessity but by choice. I drove an older car, lived in a comfortable but unassuming apartment, and rarely splurged on designer items, not because I couldn't afford them, but because I valued financial independence over appearances. I had never shared any of this with my family. At first, it was because I wanted to establish myself without their interference. Later, it became increasingly clear that they would only see my success as a resource to exploit. Ashley would need investment money for her dream house. My parents would want help with retirement. The requests would never end. So I kept quiet and played the role they had assigned me. Reliable, unremarkable Addison. But that rainy night changed everything. Sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by bank statements and legal documents, I began to formulate a plan. This wasn't about petty revenge. It was about justice, about finally standing up for myself. The next morning, I called in sick to work and made an appointment with Morrison & Associates, one of Denver's top law firms, and notably, a direct competitor to Ashley's employer. If I was going to do this, I needed serious legal backing. At 10:00 a.m. on March 1st, 2024, I sat across from Patricia Morrison herself, laying out years of financial records, text messages, emails, and verbal agreements. "So let me get this straight," Patricia said, reviewing my documents. "You paid $120,000 for your sister's law school education. You loaned her an additional $15,000 for a car, plus $9,000 for rent. You have written agreements for some of these transactions, text messages acknowledging others, and bank records showing all transfers." "Yes," I confirmed. "Plus, I recently discovered that my sister and parents convinced my grandfather to redirect a $75,000 inheritance intended for me. I have a witness, my cousin Emma, who can confirm this." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "And your sister is now a practicing attorney who has publicly declared she has no intention of repaying you while simultaneously mocking your financial status?" "Correct. Most recently at a family gathering where she humiliated me in front of everyone." Patricia smiled thinly. "Ms. Baker, I believe you have a very strong case for both the recovery of funds and possibly defamation, but may I ask, why now? These loans have been outstanding for years." I took a deep breath. "Because I'm tired of being taken advantage of, because I have the means to fight back now, and because I recently learned my sister is engaged and planning an extravagant wedding in April, while still claiming she can't afford to repay me." "I see." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "And what exactly do you want to accomplish here?" "Justice," I said simply. "I want what's legally mine, plus damages for the public humiliation and emotional distress. But more importantly, I want the truth to come out. I want my family to see me for who I really am, not who they've decided I am." Over the next few weeks, I worked closely with Patricia and her team, building an airtight case. We gathered evidence, secured affidavits from witnesses, and prepared legal documents. I also began quietly liquidating some investments, moving money into accessible accounts. If this went as planned, I would need cash on hand. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Ashley's engagement party was scheduled for April 15th, 2024 at the Belmont Plaza, one of the most exclusive venues in Chicago. The irony wasn't lost on me that the party would cost nearly as much as what she owed me. My parents had called to remind me about the event, emphasizing how important it was that I attend and support my sister on her special day. I RSVP'd promptly. This was one family event I wouldn't miss for the world. The day of the engagement party, I stood in my apartment, studying my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back at me was almost unrecognizable. Gone was the subdued marketing manager in sensible clothes. In her place stood a confident CEO in a custom-designed emerald silk gown that had cost more than Ashley's monthly salary. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. The diamond earrings I wore had been a gift to myself when Cozy Crafts hit its first million in sales. Around my neck hung a simple platinum pendant containing a microSD card with copies of all the evidence Patricia and I had compiled. "Ready?" Patricia's text message lit up my phone screen. "On my way," I replied, grabbing my clutch and the slim leather portfolio containing the final piece of my plan. The drive to the Belmont Plaza took 30 minutes. With each mile, I felt the weight of years of resentment and hurt melting away, replaced by a calm determination. By the time I handed my keys to the valet, I was completely centered. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about setting things right. The Crystal Ballroom was breathtaking, decorated in silver and white with cascading floral arrangements and champagne fountains. Ashley had spared no expense, or rather, my parents had spared no expense. Since they were footing the bill, I spotted them immediately. My mother in an overly youthful designer dress, my father looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo, and Ashley at the center of attention in a white gown that screamed, "Look at me." Her fiancé, Chad, stood beside her, tall, handsome, and radiating the same entitled confidence as my sister. He worked in investment banking and, according to my mother's frequent updates, came from old money. They made the perfect power couple, at least on paper. I waited until the party was in full swing before making my entrance. The room was packed with at least 200 guests, family, friends, colleagues, and the type of social connections Ashley had always prioritized. A photographer circulated, capturing moments for what would undoubtedly become an Instagram highlight reel. Conversations halted as I walked through the doors. I had deliberately arrived during a lull in the festivities, timing my entrance for maximum impact. Heads turned, whispers followed. Even Ashley, mid-laugh with a group of admirers, faltered when she saw me. I moved through the crowd with purpose, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. Various relatives approached, clearly surprised by my transformation. "Addison, is that you?" My Aunt Margaret's eyes widened as she took in my appearance. "You look different." "Thank you," I replied with a genuine smile. "It's amazing what a little self-investment can do." Ashley broke away from her group and approached, her practiced smile firmly in place. "Addie, you came." She air-kissed my cheeks, her eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed my outfit. "That's quite a dress. Special occasion?" "You could say that," I replied, sipping my champagne. "Congratulations on your engagement. Chad seems wonderful." "He is," she preened, gesturing toward her fiancé, who was engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation about golf. "His family owns half of Michigan. Basically, we're looking at properties in Aspen for a vacation home." "How lovely for you," I said, maintaining my composure. "I'm sure you'll be very happy together." My mother appeared at Ashley's side, her expression a mixture of surprise and disapproval as she looked me over. "Addison, I almost didn't recognize you. That dress must have cost a fortune." "It did," I confirmed pleasantly. Before she could respond, the event coordinator announced that dinner would be served shortly, asking guests to find their assigned tables. I had been placed at the far edge of the room with distant cousins and Ashley's former classmates, safely away from the main family table. "Oh dear, they've seated you all the way over there," my mother said with feigned disappointment. "We tried to rearrange things, but the planner was so strict about the seating chart." "Don't worry," I assured her. "I won't be sitting for long." As guests settled into their seats and the first course was served, I caught Patricia's eye from across the room. She gave a subtle nod, right on cue. The lights dimmed slightly, and Chad's best man tapped his glass for attention, preparing to make the first toast of the evening. I rose from my seat and walked purposefully toward the small stage where a microphone had been set up for speeches. The best man, surprised by my approach, stepped aside with a confused expression. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice calm and clear. "For those who don't know me, I'm Addison Baker, Ashley's older sister." A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. At the main table, Ashley's smile froze in place, while my parents exchanged worried glances. "I'd like to propose a toast to the happy couple," I continued. "But first, I think it's important that we all understand exactly who we're celebrating today. I nodded toward the back of the room, where Patricia stood by a laptop connected to the venue's projector system. The large screen behind me illuminated with the first slide, a scanned copy of a check for $30,000 made out to Ashley's law school and signed by me, dated September 2015. This is the first of many checks I wrote to fund my sister's legal education, I explained, my voice steady. Over the course of 4 years, I contributed $120,000 toward making Ashley the lawyer she is today. The room had gone completely silent. Ashley's face had drained of color. I was happy to help my sister achieve her dreams, I continued as Patricia advanced through the slides. Just as I was happy to loan her $15,000 for a new car in 2018 and cover her rent for 6 months to the tune of $9,000 later that year. The next slides showed text messages from Ashley, thanking me profusely for the money and promising to repay me as soon as I'm making real lawyer money. I believed in my sister. I trusted my family. Even when they mocked me for my dead-end job and financial struggles that existed precisely because I had given so much to support Ashley. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Addison, that's enough. This is completely inappropriate." "I'm not finished, Dad," I said firmly. "Please sit down." To my surprise, he did, perhaps shocked by the authority in my voice, a tone he had never heard from me before. The next slide appeared, an email from my grandfather to his attorney, dated 2 years before his death, clearly stating his intention to leave $75,000 to me to help Addison build her own business, as she has the entrepreneurial spirit I admire. Gasps and whispers filled the room. This inheritance was redirected to Ashley after my parents and sister convinced my grandfather that I didn't need it. While Ashley's law school expenses were a priority, I paused, letting the information sink in. What they didn't tell him was that I was already paying for her education. What they didn't mention was that this money was intended to help me pursue my own dreams. I looked directly at Ashley, whose face had moved from shock to fury. But the most interesting part? I didn't need that money after all, because while I was driving my 2015 Honda and living in my modest apartment, I was building this. The screen changed to show the homepage of Cozy Crafts LLC, along with press features in Forbes, Business Insider, and Entrepreneur magazine highlighting the company's success and my leadership. Founded in 2018, my company now generates annual revenue of $4.2 million, I stated calmly. I've built a successful business while maintaining my dead-end marketing job as cover. I own a patent that generates more monthly passive income than most people in this room make in a year. I am a silent partner in 3 of Denver's most successful restaurants. My investment portfolio currently stands at $2.3 million. The stunned silence was broken only by the sound of Ashley's champagne glass shattering on the floor. I kept my success private because I knew what would happen if my family found out. The same people who mocked me for being unsuccessful would suddenly find reasons why they deserved a share of my hard work. The same sister who publicly humiliated me for being jealous and broke would have her hand out, asking for investment in her next venture. I turned to face my sister directly. "Ashley, you're an attorney, so I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of promissory estoppel. Every dollar you borrowed came with a promise to repay. Every time you acknowledged my financial support, you were creating a legally binding obligation." Patricia stepped forward, handing me the leather portfolio I had brought. I removed a thick document and held it up for everyone to see. "This is a lawsuit for $219,000, representing the original loans plus legal interest, along with an additional $300,000 in damages for defamation, emotional distress, and the fraudulent redirection of my inheritance." I placed the document on the main table in front of Ashley. "Consider yourself served." The room erupted in chaos. Guests whispered frantically, some recording the scene on their phones. Chad stood frozen beside Ashley, clearly reassessing his future in-laws. My mother had collapsed back into her chair, while my father attempted to approach me, only to be intercepted by Patricia, who calmly identified herself as my attorney. "One more thing," I said, returning to the microphone as the commotion began to settle. To those wondering about the six-figure clause mentioned in the lawsuit, when I agreed to pay for Ashley's law school, I had her sign a document acknowledging the debt and agreeing to specific repayment terms once she was employed. That document included a clause stating that if she publicly disparaged me regarding financial matters, the entire debt would become due immediately, with substantial penalties. I smiled at the memory of my foresight. I may not have been a lawyer, but I always read the fine print. Ashley signed without reading. A surprising oversight for someone who would eventually pass the bar exam. Looking around the stunned room, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. "I wish you both a lifetime of happiness," I said to Ashley and Chad. "And I hope this serves as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Sometimes the person you've been looking down on has been looking out for you all along." With that, I stepped away from the microphone and walked toward the exit, Patricia at my side. The crowd parted before us like the Red Sea. As we reached the doors, I heard my name called and turned to see my cousin Emma hurrying after us. "Addison, wait," she said, slightly breathless. "What you did in there? I've wanted to say something about the inheritance for months, but I was afraid of causing family drama." "I understand," I assured her. "Family loyalty is complicated." "Not anymore," she said firmly. "I'm willing to testify about everything I know regarding Grandpa's will. What they did wasn't right." I squeezed her hand gratefully. "Thank you, Emma. That means more than you know." Outside, the night air was cool and refreshing after the tension of the ballroom. Patricia's driver was waiting to take us back to Denver. "Well," Patricia said with professional admiration, "that was quite possibly the most effective client presentation I've ever witnessed. How do you feel?" I considered the question as we slid into the back seat of the town car. "Lighter," I finally said. "Like I've put down a burden I've been carrying for years." "The lawsuit will likely settle quickly," she noted. "Your evidence is overwhelming, and I doubt your sister wants this playing out in court, especially given her professional reputation." I nodded absently, watching the Chicago skyline recede as we headed toward the highway. "It was never really about the money." "It rarely is," Patricia agreed, "but the money makes for an excellent proxy for the respect you deserved all along." The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Videos of my confrontation had gone viral on social media, with hashtags like #SisterServed and Read the Clause trending. Ashley had locked down all her social accounts after losing thousands of followers overnight, many of whom now followed me instead. My parents alternated between leaving tearful voicemails, pleading for family reconciliation, and sending threatening texts about the damage I had done to our family's reputation. I forwarded the threatening ones to Patricia and deleted the rest. Chad's mother, a formidable society matron with political connections, had apparently called off the engagement within hours of the party, deeming the Baker family too problematic for her son's future. Ashley's law firm partners were reportedly reviewing the situation in light of the negative publicity. I should have felt vindicated by the chaos, but mostly I felt sad for the family relationships that had been irreparably damaged, not by my actions, but by years of exploitation and disrespect that had preceded them. 3 days after the engagement party, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. My father stood in the hallway, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. I hesitated before stepping aside to let him enter. He looked around my modestly furnished living room with new eyes, as if trying to reconcile the successful businesswoman with the daughter he thought he knew. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said, declining my offer of coffee. "She's having a difficult time processing everything." "I imagine so," I replied neutrally. He sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. "Addison, what you did was extreme. You humiliated your sister in front of everyone who matters to her." "Like she humiliated me at Grandpa's memorial dinner?" I countered. "Or like you and Mom humiliated me every time you compared us? Or when you stole my inheritance?" He flinched at the word stole, but didn't deny it. "We thought we were doing what was best for the family." "No," I said firmly. You did what was best for Ashley, at my expense, every single time. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, my father spoke again, his voice rough with emotion. I don't know when we started seeing you as the strong one who didn't need support. Somewhere along the way, we just took you for granted. Yes, you did. Your business, Cozy Crafts, I looked it up. It's incredible what you've built. Addison, why didn't you ever tell us? I gave him a look that answered the question more effectively than words could have. He nodded sadly. I suppose we gave you plenty of reasons not to trust us with your success. This isn't how I wanted things to play out, I admitted. I dreamed of sharing my accomplishments with my family, of making you proud, but every time I considered it, I remembered how you redirected Grandpa's money, how you dismissed my career, how you always prioritized Ashley's needs and wants above mine. My father stared at his hands. Your mother and I are separating, he said abruptly. After the party, we had a massive fight about everything, all the choices we made, all the ways we failed you. I hadn't expected this development, and despite everything, I felt a pang of sadness for my parents' marriage ending this way. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. Don't be. It's been coming for a long time. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I don't expect you to forgive us, any of us, right away. Maybe not ever. But I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished, even though I had nothing to do with it, especially because I had nothing to do with it. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the defensive, dismissive father I had grown accustomed to. This was a man confronting his failures, however belatedly. Thank you for saying that, I said, surprised by how much his words meant to me. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. Ashley received a formal reprimand from her firm. They're not firing her, but she's been removed from several high-profile cases. She's had to take a hard look at her life choices. The firm is requiring her to meet with a financial counselor to address her spending habits. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Whatever happens with the lawsuit, he continued, I want you to know I think you deserve every penny. Your sister made promises she didn't keep. Your mother and I enabled her worst tendencies. We all need to face the consequences of that. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing our conversation. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation that movies might portray, nor was it the complete severing of ties I had sometimes imagined. It was messy, painful, and unresolved, like most family relationships in the real world. Over the following weeks, the lawsuit progressed rapidly. As Patricia had predicted, Ashley and my parents were eager to settle rather than face public court proceedings. The final agreement included full repayment of all loans with interest, compensation for the redirected inheritance, and a substantial sum for emotional distress. Ashley was also required to make a public statement acknowledging that her disparaging comments about my financial status had been false and defamatory. The money, when it came, felt almost anticlimactic. I donated a significant portion to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, the kind of support I had wished for when struggling to balance my own education with helping my sister. My mother eventually reached out via a carefully worded email, suggesting we meet for coffee when you're ready. I wasn't ready yet, but I didn't close the door on the possibility of a future relationship, one built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Ashley, predictably, took longer to come to terms with her new reality. Her engagement remained broken, her professional reputation tarnished, and her financial situation drastically changed. According to Emma, who still kept in touch with both sides of the family, Ashley had been forced to downsize her lifestyle significantly, moving from her luxury condo to a modest apartment and trading her Audi for a practical Hyundai. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I received a handwritten letter from her. The elegant stationery couldn't disguise the shaky handwriting or the tear stains on the paper. Addison, she wrote, I don't know how to begin apologizing for years of treating you like a personal ATM instead of a sister. I've spent weeks angry and resentful, blaming you for ruining my life. It's taken losing everything I thought mattered to realize that I ruined our relationship long before you exposed the truth. The financial counselor my firm assigned asked me one question that broke through my denial. If your sister had come to you needing $120,000 for education, would you have given it to her? The honest answer shamed me deeply. I wouldn't have. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I never saw you as deserving the same support you gave me unconditionally. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see myself clearly now, and I don't like what I see. I'm working to become someone better, someone worthy of eventually being your sister again. The letter wasn't a magic fix for years of hurt, but it was a start, a recognition of the damage done and the long road to repair. As spring turned to summer, I made some changes of my own. I finally left my marketing job to focus full-time on cozy crafts, moving the company into proper offices in downtown Denver. I bought a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, not ostentatious, but no longer hiding my success either. I started dating again, meeting a literature professor named James, who valued substance over appearance and listened more than he spoke. Most importantly, I stopped defining myself in relation to my family's expectations or perceptions. The girl who had grown up seeking approval, who had funded her sister's dreams at the expense of her own, who had hidden her light to avoid overshadowing others. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her worth and refused to apologize for her success. On a warm evening in July, I sat on my new patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Family dinner next week at Aunt Margaret's. She specifically asked me to invite you. No pressure, but the door is open if you want it to be. I considered the invitation, weighing the progress of the past few months against years of hurt. Reconciliation wouldn't happen overnight, if it happened at all. But perhaps there was value in showing up as my authentic self, neither seeking approval nor harboring resentment, but simply present and true. Tell her I'll think about it, I replied, and for the first time, that felt like enough. The six-figure clause that had triggered my family's downfall wasn't just a legal technicality buried in loan documents. It was a boundary I had finally learned to enforce, a declaration that my worth wasn't determined by others' perceptions, and my success wasn't diminished by their failure to recognize it. In the end, the revenge I had sought turned out to be something different, something more profound. The freedom to be fully myself, without apology or pretense, and that, more than any financial settlement or public vindication, was the victory that mattered most.